So good morning, everybody. Welcome to episode 9 of my podcast, The Pocket Stylist. I'm Lisa Talbot. I'm an award-winning personal stylist who has been working for about 13 years in this wonderful industry and working with some amazing clients. Today, I am thrilled to be joined by Isabelle Knight. I met Isabelle on Clubhouse a few months ago, and I just love what she does because she works with female business owners and their PR. But she's got some really interesting stories, which we will delve down into as we go through our chat. But hi, Isabelle, how are you?
Hello, Lisa. It's lovely to be here. Thanks so much for having me on. We know each other from Clubhouse, don't we? We've got to know each other a bit there. And I also love what you do as well. So I help female entrepreneurs with their PR and their publicity and growing their brand. So getting their brand story really honed and created, and then using that to act as the foundation for their PR, their marketing, and growing and creating their brand. So I think the fact that you also work with brands and brand styling is brilliant.
And that's kind of where we found I suppose, the alliance, isn't it? Because actually, when we start speaking about it, I come from personal branding from a clothing point of view, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a business owner. Obviously, we work with that, you and I, predominantly from that side of it. But it's also about how people represent themselves, so from a personal branding point of view, for today's podcast as well, it's about just how we all represent ourselves and how we feel comfortable in the clothes that we wear. And from my perspective, not necessarily trying to be somebody else that we're not. And it's so interesting. I will always remember you when we first started talking and you said to me, so what's your brand story? And I remember saying, well, my brand, I think we talked about what is your why, didn't we?
Yes.
And the whole was, what is your why? And I said, well, my why is because I always wanted to do school pickup and school drop off. And you kind of said to me, and obviously we never saw each other face to face then because we were on Clubhouse, so it was all voice. And you said, no, go a bit deeper. And you kind of, unless someone says that to you, do you kind of work out why you do either the job you do or why you've landed where you have? And I never forget that conversation we had. And you made me go right the way back to why do I love fashion? Why do I love style? Why do I love people? And it went all the way back to when, I think you know the story, when I used to work in that hairdresser's when I was 15 years old. I'd got £6 a morning. And then I'd go to the high street with, that armed with the money I'd saved to look through the shops, look at the clothes, see what people were wearing, see how you could interpret them and create outfits. So subconsciously, we kind of always end up, don't we, doing what we absolutely love.
Yes, exactly. And that's what I really help women to do. So female business owners that have set up a business, maybe, as you had first said to me, because they want to create a better life for their family, they want to provide for their children, and they want to have the freedom as well to be there for their kids and not be working all the time. So they set up their own business. But then what I get them to do is say, well, that's great. That shows us, who you are as a person. And lots of people can relate to that because it's true for lots of people, but it's not telling us what's unique about you and your business. And why should we come to you? Why should we really care about what you do and about what your business is? So then I get people to go back into, as you say, to look back and say, well, what have I been really passionate about in my life? What has motivated me? What life experiences have I had that has meant that I've now become the business owner I am now, doing the job I'm doing now? So in your case, being a personal stylist, in my case, helping people to create their stories and use that for PR and publicity. Why are you doing those things and not doing something else? Why are you in retail as opposed to being a tax inspector? It's those things that make us unique, And it might seem really obvious, but when you look at what were the things that I love doing as a young person that have led me to where I am now, and it's those passions and motivations that we really want to know about.
Yeah, and you know what, from your point of view, you look at it from that whole PR and branding side. And I look at it from, if you're a business owner, we have to represent your business. So, you know, for me as a personal stylist, if I turned up to a client, or I was going to do a presentation, if I had, I don't know, jeans that were scruffy, and I had a t-shirt on that was unironed, and I didn't have any makeup on, or anything like that, the client that I'm going to be working with will automatically think, oh, now she doesn't really look like a personal stylist. So actually, am I going to feel confident with what she's telling me? And that's so interesting. You don't have to, from a business owner, be strict and structured and rigid in your clothing. You have to represent you as that person, and represent the business that you're doing, because then you're more likely to bring people on your journey. And I think that's where you and I come along from that point of view, don't you? We agree on.
Yes. And you know, as you know, Lisa, so my background is I've worked as a publicist in film and TV for a really long time, and that's involved, you know, promoting movies, being on red carpets with the stars, running interviews with the press, with the film stars, and spending time with them and helping them in terms of representing themselves and how they present. So that includes what they wear, what their makeup is. You know, I've had to work with makeup artists and stylists to organise what are people going to wear for red carpets or for interviews whenever they're on camera. You know, a lot of thought has to go into whenever someone in the public eye is going to be photographed. And you know, which is why people in the public eye don't want to be photographed on the hop, you know, when they're kind of just moving from one place to the next, and the paparazzi get them, because they haven't planned exactly how they're going to present themselves. And that's really, really important to anyone, you know, anyone famous or you know, with a famous name. So
but that's so interesting, isn't it? Because, you know, lots of us, all of us, you know, we see people on the red carpet, or we see them attending a premiere or something like that, and they always look stunning. But what lots of people don't understand is that everything that's gone behind that to create that look, and that, like you said, that personality or that celebrity, they don't do that on their own. They have this team of people that are strategically planning, which is what they do, isn't it? They strategically plan what that person's going to look at to complement the brand. So the brand of the, I don't know, the film or the book or whatever they're doing, but also the brand of that person, because they, you know, it's exactly what sells, isn't it? So yeah. I think that's really interesting. And do you know what? I didn't know that there was, the PR people would get involved with that look, but it makes sense.
Yes, because, you know, as a PR, it's about public relations, it's about public representation of your brand. So that goes for, if I'm working with someone on their personal brand, or I'm working with somebody famous who's helping to promote the movie or the book that they've starred in, what they wear and how they present themselves is also really important. And we think about, well, you know, what is the movie saying? What's the movie about? What's the book about? And making sure that everything ties in, you know, the visual presentation of the people ties in with how do we want this movie to be portrayed. So all of those things, you know, as well as the personal brand of, you know, if you're dealing with a movie star, they've also got their personal brand, and they're also working on behalf of the film that you know, or the TV show, whatever it is. So a lot of thought goes into that. It's never just about, you know, what do I feel like wearing today? It's always carefully planned. And then you have to think about, well, what designer are they wearing? You know, whose clothes are also going to be promoted as part of this. So yeah, a lot of thought goes into that.
And that's when you then take like the whole brand awareness, don't you? Because, you know, brands are being, again, represented by that movie star or that celebrity. And do you know what's really interesting? We're talking obviously about the celebrities and the movie stars and all that type of thing. But actually this rumbles down, from my perspective, to the everyday person. We don't have to overthink it, but what's really interesting is, and quite sadly in some ways, because we live in a very fickle nation, but somebody will make a decision on us within the 7 seconds of meeting us, and it is predominantly by what we're wearing. Now, it doesn't mean to say that we have to wear Prada. we could be wearing Primark. It's how it's put together and how it represents you as a person. You know, whether you're, you know, I'm a little bit quirky, but I also love comfort. So if you tend to see what I wear, I don't really wear anything too rigid, because actually I don't want to be too rigid. It doesn't suit my personality. But what's really interesting is you can create those looks very simply, but you should never be something you're not, because otherwise, again, it's not going to represent you as a person. You know, you and I were having a quick chat before we started the recording for the podcast, and you've got this amazing quirky haircut. And I said to you, didn't I, you know, are you a little bit quirky? And you said, well, yes, I am. But actually, you know, tell the listeners you're a little bit different as well, because obviously they will see your haircut, bit like mine. But explain what you like from your clothing point of view as well.
Yeah. So from my clothing point of view, and you know, and I'm always really fascinated about kind of what informs your style, you know, the same way as your kind of brand story. So for me, so I'm half French, my mum's French, and I think I've always been influenced by that kind of French, very classic, simple style. So I like simple colours and lines and shapes. Although I have got quirky hair, that, you know, so, and I like quirky jewellery, for example. I like quirky accessories, but my clothes are fairly sort of classic and simple. So yeah, it's a mixture of those things. But having worked as a PR and a publicist, you know, again, it's about how you present yourself. You know, you have to be often very smart, or often sort of quite current in what you're wearing and how you look when you're working as a publicist, when you're promoting, you know, people or brands or films or TV shows and that kind of thing. You know, you also have to kind of uphold a brand professionally in what you're doing as well. So yeah, I'm always interested in what people, and how people present in terms of what they're doing.
But you see, that's really interesting what you said. You have to be current, you know, because, and again, you have to be current in what you're wearing to represent your client, because again, it's perception. And it's so interesting how, you know, we go back to that whole 7 seconds, you know, and lots of ladies will say to me, you know, I don't want to be trendy because I've gone past a certain age. But do you know what? First of all, people will have heard me say it before, style doesn't have an age limit. You know, we don't get to a certain age and everyone goes, right, okay, now you need to don the fleeces and your, you know, your jeans with just a pair of old trainers. Style doesn't have that age limit. But what it does do, it allows, fashion and trends allows people to be modern and current. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you've got to wear top to toe in pink, for example, this season, because it's the accent colour. But it's about saying, do you know what, if you want to be current, then inject a little bit of pink this season, whether it be in a scarf, whether it be for you, maybe in an accessory, whether it be, you know, as a shirt or something like that. So it's your whole look and your personal branding that we're talking about has to represent not only you as a person, but it can be modern and current. And I think that's when, from a business point of view, people go, oh, do you know what? I would like to work with you. And from a stylist point of view, it's, you know, it's even more different, because we are, I suppose, in a way, expected to look a certain way. But we're all different, a bit like PR ladies and gentlemen, you know, we're all different. We all bring the same knowledge, but everybody's style will be represented a different way. But interestingly, people buy a stylist or a PR, well, predominantly a stylist, for what they're wearing, because they look at what they're wearing and go, do you know what? I like that. So actually, that's what I kind of can resonate with. Whereas if I was incredibly artistic, you know, there's only a few people that would appeal to. So it's really interesting. I just think personal branding from a PR perspective is so important, isn't it?
Yes, no, it really is. And I mean, you kind of get into the sort of stereotypes of, you know, PR, you know, kind of PR women are always thought to be kind of sleek, wearing black, I mean, and there is a lot of kind of wearing black. If we're on a red carpet with clients, we're not the one, as professional publicists, you're not the one being photographed, the client is. There is a lot of kind of wearing black and being kind of understated often, smart but understated.
Did you find that quite restrictive when you have to do that? Or because if it's not your personality, black's a very deep, dark tone, but it's really interesting to hear that as that PR publicist, you almost have to take the back seat, don't you? So you are almost dressing in a way that you are molding into the background. That's really interesting.
Yes, and that and that is the sort of stereotype of how the PR, working those events, working in that field. But obviously for me, I quite like, like I said, I quite like the classic styles as well, so it kind of suits, but there's also that that being current again, sort of being slightly on trend and slightly because having to dress as though you're up to date with what's going on in the world, that's reflected in how you dress and what you wear.
That must have been so exciting though. Obviously working in that industry, exciting but challenging, would you say?
Yeah, no, it is stressful, challenging, and obviously when I became a mum, that's when as with many of us, that's when I kind of changed my business, because I couldn't be working events all the time. Although I was still working on set, and working on set with films and TV is another thing again, because when you're part of the crew essentially as a publicist, you've got to be working on set, and often that's in windy, cold conditions. If it's in the UK, it might be really early mornings, so a lot of people on set will be in great big jackets and sort of really, really wrapped up. So that's the kind of, ironically, that's the really unglamorous side of it on the surface. If you're not actually on camera, you're going to be in jeans and a great big hoodies and jackets.
Did you find, Isabelle, I mean, I'm really interested now, did you find that, when, I know you said earlier as well that, you helped find the outfits and the garments, and you worked with the makeup artists and things like that from a celebrity's point of view. I'm just trying to understand from a style personality point of view, do you think some of the personalities and the celebrities that you dressed, do you think that in some ways they weren't representing their true self, but they were representing the brand? Do you think?
I mean, that's a really interesting one, and yeah, I think there's probably some truth in that, because to meet a celebrity when they're in their own time, their downtime, often they're going to look really different than when they're on a job, than when they're essentially, because a lot of film and TV stars are being dressed by the costume department of for the show that they're making, and then they're being dressed again to do the promotions and the interviews, when they go on Graham Norton and when they're on the red carpet and all of those things. So I mean, there's definitely there's definitely that kind of grey area of how much is their own personality and how much are you dressing for your job. Like we were saying, everyone dresses for their work and their job to have that kind of image. So yeah, it's a really interesting one.
And do you know what's really interesting? I don't know if you watched the Brits last night. So I did have the Brits on, and do you know what I find really intriguing is Harry Styles. I know you and I work with the majority of women, but you know what he's just created this brand, hasn't he? And last night I looked at him in the suit that he had on, and it is like, oh, wow. And you know what? It's different. It's eye-catching. It's a talking point. But I looked at his face last night. I kind of moved away from what he was wearing, and I looked at his face and I thought, wow, you've really grown up. His face, his structure of his face, and he was clean shaven and his hair was neat and tidy. But this suit just said it all. And you know what? As soon as I turned on the TV this morning, they were talking about his suit. And actually, what's so interesting, I couldn't actually tell you what he said in his acceptance speech last night, but I could tell you what he was wearing. And that's so intriguing, isn't it, from a brand point of view? And what we want to do, sorry, I kind of carried on then. And what I think what's really interesting is we want people to remember us for the right reason, not the wrong reason. But if we're working in a business, especially as a female business owner, we don't want to, what we wear, detract from the message we're delivering either, do we?
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, and on that topic of, what do you remember about, do you remember the person, or do you remember what they were wearing? You know, when we look at the Oscars every time, that's why it's such a big, you know, it's such a big deal. What were they wearing? And quite often you remember the dress, you don't remember what they said, those in their Oscar winning acceptance speeches. And do you remember what they were wearing for the right reasons or the wrong reasons? And there's, you know, there's so much pressure, isn't there?
Oh, unbelievable. Do you know what? I could talk to you forever, absolutely ever on this topic. But for any female business owners and female entrepreneurs, Isabelle, before we obviously finish this lovely conversation we're having, where can people find you? Because, you know, definitely, you know, we've talked about branding and we've talked about style, but if people would like to come and chat to you a little bit more, where can they find you?
Yeah, so they can find me. I'm on Instagram, isabelle.knight.pr. My business is buildyourbandwithpr.co.uk is my website. So yeah, if anybody wants to talk to me about brand story or about PR for your business, I work with female entrepreneurs and small business owners, and I do mentoring, I do programs, and I have a membership as well.
Oh, brilliant. Do you know what? It's been lovely talking to you. Thank you for the insights as well, because it's some brilliant insights, and it has just worked beautifully, where we can see that clothing plays such an important part in everything that we do, but predominantly it's about, you know, how we represent ourselves, but not only that, how, you know, how it makes us feel as well, to give us the confidence. So thank you so much to Isabelle for joining me today. I really hope that you've enjoyed the podcast, The Pocket Stylist. We're on episode 9. I can't quite believe it. I hope you enjoy listening to it, and I'll see you all soon. Bye.